meet you all. So I'm Rebecca Walmsley and I'm the MBCHB Programme Director at St Andrews, and clinically I'm a GP. So 4 days of the week I'm an academic, and then 1 day of the week I work clinically as a GP. And my talk is split a little bit into two. So the first bit's about how to get into medicine generally, and this is through sort of a Scottish UK lens. And then the second half is more specific to St Andrews. So what do we look for in St Andrews in particular with your admissions? I'm very happy to take queries and questions. I think we're going to do that at the end as a group. So this may sound obvious, but medicine's a vocation. It's a lifelong career, and you have to really be committed to it. So before you start on what can be a conveyor belt, you do really need to be confident that this is what you want to do and this is the right thing for you. And of course, you can never be 100% certain of that. But do think about what being a doctor actually is, because there are lots of caring professions. So I often hear I want to make patients better, and of course we all do. But actually there's lots and lots of different ways that you can do that. So try to think about what being a doctor is and what that means, and get some experience and do some research before you commit yourself to that. It is also a stepped process to get into medicine. There's various things and hurdles that you need to jump. So being here is a great first step for you to realise what some of those steps actually are. And the Medical Schools Council has some really great advice. So if nothing else, after this session, if you are interested in applying for medicine, go on to the MSc website. I've given the link there. It will walk you through all the different steps. It will compare and contrast different universities and different medical programs, including their entry requirements, and it will talk you through that route map that I've mentioned. So it's a great resource for people that want to study medicine. And to talk a little bit about the different courses, because it's becoming increasingly complex. When I did it, really there was one predominant route. Now there's a variety of routes to do a medical degree. What we call a standard course is a 5-year run-through course. Then you'll have programs including Edinburgh, which has an intercalated year. So it's 6 years in total, but you get a Bachelor of Science and a medical degree. And perhaps not so relevant to you here from school sector, but so you're aware, there's also graduate entry programs where you've done another degree first, and then you go to a specific graduate entry medicine program and do it in a 4-year time frame. But whether you have that 4, 5 or 6-year route, they all give you an MBCHB, Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery, which sometimes you'll also see as MBBS, which means the same thing, okay? And they're all what's called a primary medical qualification in the UK. They're regulated by the GMC, that's our regulatory body, and that will allow you to enter into hospital training, the foundation years. So after you complete your medical degree, you then do 2 years in Foundation Year 1 and Foundation Year 2, the foundation programme. So they would all access that. So what is that route map into medicine? So first off, you'll need to have some work experience. You need to have work experience anyway to make sure this is the right thing for you, but we actually require that as part of our application process. We can talk about that. I mentioned how it's critical that you understand what a doctor is and what a doctor does. You also have the hurdle of the UCAT, which stands for the University Clinical Applied Test. It's a test and we get a score, and we base who we get into medical school in part on the UCAT score. And different universities have got different requirements about UCAT, which is on their webpage. You've got the UCAS, and the deadline for medicine's early, and a personal statement within that. And then typically an interview, and a lot of universities now use an MMI, so a multiple mini interview, which is where you rotate around a variety of stations. And then you have to have your grades, your academic achievements. So they're the main parts to it: the work experience, the UCAS application with your personal statement, an interview process, and making sure you jump through the academic hurdles. And it may sound obvious, but there's also professional requirements around being a medical student and a doctor. So there are some things that would preclude you from entering the profession, which are rare. but the expectation of professional behaviour is different to another degree that isn't medicine. So we get asked a lot about what kind of work experience do you need. I do not come from a family of doctors. My parents weren't doctors. So you don't have to go and sit in a GP surgery. You don't have to go on hospital wards. If you can get that, great, because it'll give you lots of insight. But if you can't get that, that's fine too. Volunteer at a nursing home or a care home, these kind of voluntary caring type experiences often show, do you have that empathy and caring side? Can you see the greater healthcare workforce? So when you're looking for work experience, don't think I have to go and sit with a GP, I have to go and sit with a hospital consultant. Great if you can get it, but there's lots of other opportunities that are equally valuable. The thing I would say though now, certainly at St Andrews, is we were accepting virtual experience during and post-COVID, and now we're not. We're now expecting that experience to be in person, whatever it is that you choose to do. The UCAT, this is just taken from the MSc, but it talks about the University Clinically Applied Test. So there is a website there, you have to register. There is a payment for that test. There are bursaries available to complete the test, and the test result holds just for a year. So it says here it's a 2-hour computer-based test that can be taken at centres across the UK and worldwide. And it includes sub-tests including verbal reasoning, decision-making, quantitative reasoning, abstract reasoning, and situational judgment. And the universities will use your score on that test to determine, by and large, I say different universities have different approaches, who crosses the next barrier into potentially getting into the medical school. And I've popped the link there. In terms of your personal statement, there's lots of advice out there. So the MSc, again, has got advice on writing a personal statement for medicine, but UCAS has got advice on writing a personal statement more generally, so not just for medicine, but for any sort of area. And you can see here things that it highlights. So think about what medicine means to you and express it in your own words. Focus on what you've learned through your experience. Write about the knowledge you've gained about life as a doctor rather than the activity itself. Explain why certain skills are important to a doctor. Write about any outreach activity. Include some information on an area of medicine that interests you and some information about what you like to do in your spare time. And do proofread it to make sure that it's written to a high standard, doesn't have errors within it. I don't expect people to know what type of doctor they want to be. Okay, it's often, I find that generally quite surprising if you know exactly what you want to do at 17, 18. But it is good to be able to express your interests. So now that was more broad. This is sort of specific to St Andrews. So you have to bear in mind all universities will have their own entry criteria. Okay, so they'll be broadly similar, but there will be differences. So St Andrews has a hurdle-based approach. So we don't look at everything all together at the end. If you jump a hurdle, you move to the next step. Okay? So you have the hurdle of academic performance and personal statement and reference. If you jump through that hurdle, we then look at your UCAT global score. We don't have a set cut-off of UCAT for every year. Okay? That varies. Then we invite about 650, the top 650, for multiple mini-interviews. For us, we have 4 stations, each 6 minutes long. And for that, for 2 of them, you'll be expected to role play with an actor. And 2 of them will be looking at other kinds of skills. Okay? Now, for that, we're not expecting any specialist knowledge. It's really looking at common sense, moral reasoning, looking at things through different people's perspectives, rather than can you recall the GMC criteria on X or Y. And then we'll rank based on MMI and dependent on the route that the student is on, be it the Scotland or England route. So that's the St Andrews process. And St Andrews, we offer a 4, 5 and 6 year route, and we also have a gateway programme. So I'm not going to talk about our 4-year graduate entry, but that is in conjunction with Dundee, and it's called ScotGem. Our 5-year route is relatively new. We're running it for the first time. We've got second years on that programme now. So it's a run-through 5-year MBCHB with St Andrews throughout the whole of those 5 years, getting a primary medical qualification at the end. But we also have our 6-year route, which is our more traditional and long-established route, where students come to us for 3 years, and then they go to a partner medical school for another 3 years. They get a BSc and then an MBCHB at the end of the 6 years in totality. So I say it's becoming more complex. And I'll talk a little bit about the Gateway programme, which is a 1-year pre-med. So that's 6-year, our more traditional offering. That's 3 years St Andrews and 3 years elsewhere. So we've got about 60 on the England route. So they're 3 years St Andrews and then 3 years Manchester or Barts. And then about 60 places on the Scotland route. So 3 years St Andrews and then any of the medical schools in Scotland, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Dundee or Aberdeen. We've held that route for many years. It performs really, really well at National Student Survey. We're one of the top medical schools, and we get very positive feedback from our partner schools about the training. So this is the new one. This is the 5-year run-through with St Andrews, which is called ScotCom. So it's Scottish Community Orientated Medicine, and that's a combination of both hospital-based medicine and what we call community medicine, which means things like GP medicine, community hospital medicine. So it's about following the whole patient journey in the round, but the whole 5 years is hosted by St Andrews. And then the gateway to medicine. And then I'm going to start to talk about our entry criteria in terms of our grades entry criteria. So our Gateway to Medicine is a 1-year programme that's intended to promote study of medicine amongst groups that are traditionally underrepresented at university. So it's got lower entry criteria in terms of grades, but it's got specific requirements. So applicants must be considered home for fee purposes and meet some widening participation criteria. For that, then at S5, there'd be a minimum of 4 Bs and higher, and that's to include chemistry, and one of either biology, human biology, maths or physics, and predicted at S6, CC predicted grades. Also has the requirements at Nat 5, okay? There isn't a guarantee with that 1 year that you would then get into a run-through medical programme at St Andrews, but it increases your chances in that if you pass Gateway to Medicine and have a good UCAT score and the multiple interviews, the mini interviews, then you would get into St Andrews Medicine programme. So that's a gateway to medicine. But in terms of our standard entry, so this is our standard medical degrees, both that 3-year and the 5-year. These are the grade requirements that we have. Now, I know it's a bit dry to read it out, but I appreciate this is very important to people and something we get asked about a lot. So I will just pause on this slide and read it out for you. So for our standard entry at S5, it's 4 A's and a B at higher, to include chemistry and one of maths, biology or physics. And S6 have to be predicted 3 B's at higher or advanced higher. Need biology, maths and English to at least National 5 grade B. And chemistry higher can be sat in S6, but must be sat alongside another science or maths. And remember, there's that UCAT test too, okay? We have the requirements in A-levels and GCSEs, and we also have requirements for schools that do IB, so International Baccalaureate. If you are wanting to know the IBs, it's on our webpage, or you can ask me, I've got those numbers as well. But for today, I've just presented highers, advanced highers and A-levels as we've got a limited time slot. So these are the A-levels and GCSE requirement equivalents. For those that may have come from more disadvantaged background, be that because they're a carer, a care leaver, or potentially have more socioeconomic disadvantage, and at present we use a postcode area, we do have what's called contextualised entry, which is slightly lower grade requirements. That would be 3 A's and 2 B's in S5, and an achieved or predicted BB in S6, with a 10% uplift on the UCAT score. I say that's written again there for A-levels. So that's some of the dry stuff, but obviously I'm here to represent the school, but I'm the course director, so my sort of baby is not so much the admissions, it's the content of the course. And I really do think at St Andrews, and actually all the medical schools, in Scotland, and I'm sure much wider, but they're the ones I'm familiar with. They do really offer an excellent learning environment. So in the early years, it's much more intense than other degree programs. So you'll have a lot of face-to-face contact, much more so than other degrees. So for St Andrews in our early years, you have about 22 hours of contact time, and that will be a mixture of lectures, practicals, clinical skills, so meeting patients, talking to patients and to actors, and also self-study, guided study. And you can see there a picture of one of our labs. We're becoming more unusual in that we still offer full-body dissection, which is often considered a bit of a unique selling point of St Andrews. There's a picture there of our facilities, and we really do have world-class facilities for dissection. And our clinical skills. So we have multiple rooms that look like hospital wards, and we use these for you to work through scenarios so you can practice in a safe setting. So rather than obviously practicing actually on the wards in the GP surgeries, we have loads of rooms that look like that, and we give you exercises to work through as teams, but also teach you practical skills and procedures. So when you're taking blood and things for the first time, you're not doing it for real, you'll be doing it on a mannequin in a simulation lab, and we do that for all sorts of different skills. We have a lot of teaching in clinical placements, and certainly in the latter years of ScotCom, that's where you'll be based for almost the entirety of the course. So the earlier years will be a lot of St Andrews contact, and the later years will be a lot of clinical placement contact in the NHS setting. Okay? We use a variety of health boards. Our biggest board is Fife that we use at St Andrews because that's where we sit. And we also have placements at Borders and Forth Valley. So that's me coming sort of to the end of my time. So I've just got some pictures to show you now really just of where I'm based. So this is the medical school. So we're lucky we've got a purpose-built medical school in St Andrews. So we have a lovely town, but we've got brand new, or now it's 10 years old, but it's purpose-built premise. The beach, if you like, is just next to where we are. So I can walk there in my lunch sometimes if I'm not too busy. And also you'll see lots of photos of our pier. This is where we have sort of the graduation. You see people walking in the gardens and so on in St Andrews. So I say I'm here to represent the school. So I'm not part of the admissions team, but I can take queries. I've also put the email address there if people do have any more specific queries about admissions based on their own personal circumstance. And also just the webpage there if you want to take a further look. So thank you all for your time.